Hey friends, welcome back. You are listening to episode number 66. This episode is everything you need to know about the Enneagram. Just kidding. That's impossible. But today is so super fun because I get to talk to my friend, Becky Williams, about the Enneagram, how she got into it, and what she's discovered through her research. Newsflash, it's not just taking a test, it's really learning the numbers by their core desires, motivations, values, fears, and everything in between. We even talk about how we've been mistyped in the past. Shoot, I honestly don't even know if mine is right now. It's crazy. I always thought I was a 7. Now I think I might be an 8, but then there are 9 things, but not really, so I don't even know at this point. So come on, let's dive in to this super fun subject. You're listening to the Live with Audacity podcast. Heyo! I'm your host, Melissa Stewart, and I went from floundering entrepreneur to successful business mama with one simple idea: to be myself. What I learned was the blueprint I needed wasn't out there, it was already inside me, and I just needed permission to do my own thing, my own way. And I want to help you do that too. Join me and my guests as we help mompreneurs around the world grow an impactful business customized to them without confusion, frustration, and distractions. Are you ready? Because girl, it is time to embrace your authenticity and live with audacity. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Live with Audacity podcast. I am so excited. You know, I say that every single week, but today is no different because I am excited to have my friend Becky Williams here on the podcast today. And today we're going to talk about the Enneagram. And I just think this is so cool and so fun to talk about. And we'll dive into that a little bit and mistyping and all those things because that has totally happened to the two of us. But I met Becky in a fellow business owners group. And we just totally hit it off and have had so much fun getting to know each other. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is so much fun. And I know that we've done a few talks with each other, and it's just like, it's going to be so much fun for everybody just to eavesdrop on our conversation because it's so weird how you can just meet somebody and then it's like, oh, we've been friends forever. And you're like, oh, well, we haven't actually met in real life, but it feels like we have.
Oh my gosh. You know, you saying that always makes me, because I always feel the exact same way when I get done with a podcast. I'm like, I love my life. It's so amazing. Yeah. And I always think one of these days I'm going to host a retreat and I'm going to meet all the people that I've gotten to interview. And it's just going to be like the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, that would be super awesome. I'm totally down for it. Send me an invite.
Okay, you got it, girl. All right, so tell us a little bit about how you got to this place. I know it's been kind of a windy road, and why Enneagram and what jumped out at you about Enneagram.
Yeah, well, I just appreciate you having me come on and talking to your people. I really appreciate this opportunity. And so I'm a health coach and a life coach, but I really like to say I'm a motherhood and mindset coach because I feel like everything kind of circles back to that. You know, I've done all kinds of thing. My husband always teases me. He says, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I still don't. So I went to school for one thing. I mean, like I just keep every 3 years, I think I've changed careers, and I'm not talking about like similar things, but we're talking drastic change. I went from speech pathology and then got a teaching degree. And then I like looked into some kind of like baby whisperer class thing that you could do online. And then I like started selling insurance. And so I told my husband that we're going on 10 years going on 11 years of marriage. I said, you're lucky you passed my 3-year mark because I seem to change things every 3 years.
Oh my God. You know what's so hilarious about that is literally we are so meant to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
I have almost the identical story. I've sold insurance. I was a dance teacher. I have literally I had a cookie trailer. I've literally done all the things. And you know what's so funny is I always ask people when I meet them, so what do you do? And it's not because I want to judge you about your income or what you do or your lifestyle or anything like that. I'm obsessed with knowing what people do because I keep thinking that someone's going to have this job, and I'll be like, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah. So in real life, I am a virtual assistant for 3 different people. And it's kind of like a blessing and a curse because of the position that I have with them, I get to meet a lot of really cool people, not in real life, just online, but like I set up podcast interviews and stuff. So I'm like sitting, listening to podcast reviews, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I love that. And I'm like Googling there. So I totally get it. I'm like the next person that comes on the podcast, I'm like, their life is so cool. Oh, they teach people to do that. What certification do you need for that? And I'm like hopping on the next one, to do it. But the reason that I settled on Enneagram is because ever since I was little, our family is real big on self-development stuff. My grandfather and my dad run the Dale Carnegie franchise here in like Louisiana and parts of Texas. And so, yeah, so
I did not know that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So we've been around it our whole life. And, I took the class at 12, had a day planner. My dad took me to the Franklin Day Planner store and let me pick out this bright red day planner, and little did he know that it's not going to help me, but I'll continue to buy planners and pretend like that's the magic in my life. But so we've always been real big on understanding who we are and who God made us to be. And the thing that we've always done is like disc profiles. And then we, try the color profiles and things like that. And we joke about it in our family about different personalities because I'll let you in on a little secret. We're all dominant personalities and our parents are not. So they survived and we had a great childhood. But when I came across the Enneagram, I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is more about the intentions of the heart and motivations that make us who we are. So I was like, okay, I've got to understand more about this because if you look just on paper, like at a desk profile, it shows that like my brother and my 2 sisters and I are pretty much the same personality, but on Enneagram, all 4 of us are completely different. And that's what I love about it because it talks about what's on the inside, your fears, your desires, your weakness, your longing, and all of that is different for everybody. And so it's like to me, the other things are a bird's eye view. And then this one's like a deep dive into who you are. So it just continues to intrigue me. The more I know, the more I'm like, okay, now I got to study and understand that part of it. I mean, it's so multifaceted for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk a little bit about mistyping because I think a lot of people are just like, cool, I'll just take this quiz, this test, and figure out what I am. And, you and I have both done that.
Yep.
And I walked around living my life thinking I was a 7, the enthusiast, which I totally am. That totally describes me. But doing a little more digging into, like you said, the motivations and the fears and things like that, and I was like, ooh, those things in the 7 don't necessarily align as well as an 8 does.
Yeah. And
then I started reading about the 8 wing 7, and I was brain exploding everywhere. Like, oh my God, it's like they know me.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your experience of being mistyped and how you kind of worked your way through your studies to figure out what you are now.
Yeah. So I did the same thing. I was like, okay, here's the magical test. And the magical test is going to tell me all of the things and it's just going to be served on a silver platter. And so I took the test and it said that I was a 3. And I was like, oh, I can totally see that. Successful achiever. I mean, change my career every 3 years. I've done a lot, right?
Yeah.
But, and I sat with that for a long time. And a lot of the podcast interviews that I did with other people or on their podcast, I'm like, yeah, I'm a 3. And I kept saying that, but there was like this little part of me that I was like, something just still doesn't feel right because of the motivations and that type of stuff. Like all of it was kind of me, but not dead on. And so then I'm like, in this big dramatic spotlight of like, who am I? I'm supposed to be this expert and I don't even know my number. And so, diving into the study to get my certification, I just put all of my stereotype things that I had thought before I really started studying and looking at each number and understanding the motivations of each one and just really looking at it. And I had so much trouble with it because I could see myself in all of the numbers. And I'm like, maybe I'm a 4 because I like artsy stuff. I like to be creative. I sold t-shirts on, online. I had an Etsy store. I used to have a monogramming business. So I'm like, maybe that's it. But the motivations didn't fit. Then I was like, I'm just going to take the test again. That'll solve it. So I took the test again and got a 7. And I was like, I'm a 7, but I hate to travel. Like I would rather just be at home. I don't want to host parties at my house. I don't like that. So I was like, man,
that is so me. I want to do all of those things.
See? And I'm like, I'm a horrible 7. If I'm a 7, like I'm a real downer. And I was like, well, maybe I'm an 8. And then so I tried the 8 on and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty bold. And like, I can tell you where to go pretty quickly, but then I feel really bad about it. So I was like, that's a little bit softer. So I don't know. And then I finally settled on a 9. So my brother and I were dialoguing about it. And because he's read the book like twice. He's a 5. So he just has to know all the facts and all of that. And I was like, I think I'm a 9. He's like, peacemaker? You are not a peacemaker. I'm like, just hear me out. Wait a minute. And so I found out that I'm actually the counter type, which means that I'm not what a typical 9 would look like, which would be a peacemaker, someone who's really good at hearing both sides and able to keep the peace and wants peace all the time. But when I started to like dig deep into it and look at those weaknesses and all that stuff, I was like, I am a 9. I am a 9. So what, you've settled on an 8, right? Is that what you said?
For now, I've settled on an 8 wing 7, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And the wings have a lot to do with it too, because just because you're a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or any of the numbers, your wing makes a huge difference. So your wing is going to be the number on either side of you. So for example, if you're a 2, then you're either going to have a 1 wing or you're going to have a 3 wing. And so you'll take on the characteristics of either one.
Okay. So when you first started getting into this and you would see people post, I'm a 6 wing 4, and you're like, nope, that's not how it works.
It's not a thing. It's not a thing, sister.
That's not a thing. Were you like the one person that was out there like, nope, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah, and I'm like channel in your inner 9 and not your inner 8, where I'm like, no, you're wrong.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's talk. Okay, so you think you're a 9 now. What is the counter type to that? Like what are the counter characteristics to the 9?
Oh, like what would make me a 9?
Yeah. So like you said, I am a 9, but I don't really necessarily show up as a 9.
Yeah. So for a counter, so each type is going to have a counter type, and that means most of the time that's when you mistype because you're like, ooh, I think I'm such and such number, but I don't look like that. And so for the 9 for a counter type is called participation, and it's a social subtype. So what this means is that I don't really feel like I belong anywhere, which hence changing my job every 3 years. And also because we're more outgoing, active, and involved with others. A lot of times, listen to this, a lot of times they will mistype, this subtype will mistype as a 3 or a 7 because they're cheerful and have, they like to be task oriented. And so that was part of what was tripping me up because I'm like, maybe I'm a 3, maybe I'm a 7. But a typical 9, like their sin, quote unquote, people call it different things, their weakness, whatever you want to call it, is sloth, which is not action. So for me, I was like, well, I take a lot of action, so I can't really be a 9 because they're more set back and more relaxed and more peaceful. And so for me, that's what happened with mistyping is I didn't look like a typical 9 because of being action oriented. And that, I mean, it happens for a lot of the different numbers.
So is the counter type really just like how you show up when you're not confident in who you are? Like you feel like you need to be someone else because you're not confident that you are who you're supposed to be, or who, you know what I mean? Like you, like,
Yeah.
we all struggle with that in some ways, I think. And so I think that we all think people want something different from us than what we offer. And so it can be really easy for us to show up as the way we think people want us to show up. Do you think that's related to that counter type style? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I love that question because you're on the right track, but I think we're in the wrong section of the Enneagram because your subtype is not something that you choose. So if you think Enneagram, going down from most broad to deep, so you have the Enneagram number, which is going to be your main one, and then going down a step, you're going to figure out what your wing is. So is left side, right side, whatever it is. And then you're going to go down to your subtype. So this is going to be like, you could have a 9 wing 8 that is a self-preservation, which is appetite. And they like physical comforts, dwelling in a supportive environment. Like those things are important. Or you could have the counter type like me, or maybe you have the fusion one, which is the sexual subtype. And that's somebody who likes to take on attitudes and feelings and ideas of other people instead of their own. So subtype is more like broken down who you are. But I think what you're talking about is your levels of health. And so for me, I see the Enneagram through the lens of the gospel. I see the Enneagram as a tool. And so when you line that up with who you are in God and who you are in your mission in life, yeah, you can totally live in misalignment with who you are. And I think that's more what you're talking about, because each number can look like another number in health and in being unhealthy. So if you think about standing like at the edge of, I like to think in pictures. So standing at the edge of a river, let's say a deep river here down in Louisiana, okay? Really dirty. We got trash everywhere and all the bayous, okay? So if you stand at the edge of that, it's very easy to stand there, but it's gross. Like you don't really want to do it. But it's pretty easy to stand ankle deep in water. You're not having to swim. You're not having to do much effort. And to me, that's when you're unhealthy. Like if you think of it that way, it's pretty easy to live unhealthy. So for me, being unhealthy would be just going completely numb to life and like not responsive, not reactive. I don't care if my kids treat me bad. I don't care if I'm in a bad marriage. I don't care, whatever. It's just easier to go along. So this is specifically talking about like as a guy, okay? You go into the water a little further, maybe waist deep, and you're more in alignment with who you are, but it may cause a little bit more friction and it may cause a little bit more, take more effort to be able to do that. Okay. And then you keep on going and you're completely underwater and you're having to put that pressure on yourself to be able to stay afloat. Right. And it's not as easy, but it's the most rewarding. So let's say you're working on your goal of holding your breath underwater. Well, it's going to be really hard if you're standing on the bank,
Right. Yeah.
So reaching those different levels of health, I think, are what's important on being who you are. And so I think that's probably more of what you're talking about. Like, are they just kind of coasting through life, or are they really like fighting to be who they are and be authentic?
Oh, that's so good. And now I'm totally obsessed with the Enneagram. And now I want to know all the things. Oh my God. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. But I gotta be honest, like it seems like that 7, 8, 9 area, it's like I just like kind of hover around there. There are some things that I'm like, yes, definitely so me. And then the other things where I'm like, maybe a little bit, but that's so interesting. Okay, so let's talk about how the Enneagram can help us understand our ways that we mother our children, and maybe even, I know we can't type other people, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a thing? Like, you're not supposed to type
Yes.
other people. But how do we, can we use the Enneagram to help us understand our children better so that we can be better parents to them?
Yeah, totally. And so for our boys, I use the same thing. So I think the most useful thing to do with children, I would say under the age of 16, I feel like if they're 16 and over, they can, I mean, they're old enough to kind of know who they are. And if they're interested in the Enneagram, they can dive deep. And I think at that age, they could type themselves. But anything less than that, I really look at the wounding messages, the wounding childhood messages, and I try to just cover all 9. Like, just make sure that I'm not sending those messages to them. Now, you're going to have kids that do have more characteristics of different numbers. But once again, the Enneagram is about their motivations. And so there's not really any way to do that. But I would just say to have patience with them, allow them to become who they are and not put labels on them, because you have some kids who are going to want to please you. They're going to be, wanting to mimic what you do. Then you have other ones that just want to push against you. And so I would think more of kids in groups and not specific numbers. So like you can have a heart triad, you have the head triad, then you have the gut triad. And then you're going to have different reactions to things based on that triad. And so I think understanding our kids of like what motivates them, do they do more things with their heart? Okay, then look at the heart triad and see which ways to communicate with them. Is it more head? They want like, okay, why do I have to go to bed right now? I don't understand. My kids do this. I mean, my friends do this. They don't have to go to bed till 8:30. Why can't I? And they want like this power struggle back and forth with you. Like, they're probably going to be in the head triad because they want that information. They want that intellectual connection with you. And then like the gut triad is like, I'm upset. I don't understand why. I just have a bad feeling about this. I need you to hold me. Can you help me? That kind of thing. So I think that's probably the most useful thing that we can do for our kids until they can decide on their own which number they are specifically.
So interesting. Okay. So, wow, I don't even really know where to go from there. That's so incredible and amazing. And so tell me, is there anything that you have learned? Obviously, you've learned a lot about yourself, but is there anything specific that you've learned about yourself through learning about the Enneagram that has changed the way that you show up in your life and in your relationships with your spouse or your children or anything like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say the word that comes to mind when you ask me that is grace. And remembering that, everybody says, oh, everybody sees the world differently and we all have our own, way of seeing things. But like, the Enneagram is about that. There are 9, according to that, if you just think of it in a broad way, there are 9 different ways to see the world. Like, oh my gosh, you can have 9 kids grow up in a family and they all have a different idea of how their childhood went. Right. And so understanding for me that I have my own motivations, I have a weakness that is where I can really turn to God to strengthen whatever it is, that I'm struggling with. And then I have a longing, which is what I just feel like if I can have that longing and that desire, then my whole world would be fine. And everybody has one. And so, and it's different for everybody. And so when it comes to my husband and I, he's still kind of working through it, but he thinks he's a type 5. And for a type 5, they need space. They need time to recharge. They need time alone. I don't. I want people. Remember? I'm that social subtype. And so whenever he used to come home from work, and he's a welder, so he works a very physical job. So he would come home and I'm like, I've been working on my computer all day with little kids. So he's home and I'm like, hey, woo, I'm glad you're home. It's an adult. I can talk to you. How was your day? You know, how many inches did you get today on your pipe stuff? You know, all the, you know, like, I don't know technical terms, but he's like, and he's so gentle and sweet towards me. We've been married almost 11 years, so he's learned how to deal with all of my craziness. But like, I realized I was taking it personally before I understood all this Enneagram stuff. I was taking it personally that he's like, I think I'm just going to go and take a shower for a little while, and then I'll be out in a little while. And I'm like, why? Like,
I know. You're like, I'm so excited to see you.
Yeah, and I took it so personally because for me to recharge, I need people. For him to recharge, he needs to get away from people. And so after we understood that about each other, it was like, hey, when you get home, the first 30 minutes are yours. You do whatever you want to do. Or like right now, he's really working on exercise and that type of thing. And so he comes home. If I'm not, you know, doing a podcast or working on a big project, I'm like, hey, I've got the kids. You go to the gym. Go take your time and recharge. And when he comes home, he's just like battery full. You know, he's ready to help with supper and bath and all that stuff. But before, it was this constant thing of like, why don't you love me? And he's like, why don't you give me space? And I'm like, our marriage is failing. No, it wasn't. We just weren't talking on the same level, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's really valuable to point out too, is that even outside of Enneagram, right? Like you said, we all have our own perspectives and our own experiences and the way that we see the world. And, you know, this brings me kind of to the 5 love languages, right? Like if right, like if your love language is quality time,
it is,
and his is, you know, acts of service or whatever, you know, physical touch. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and you're trying to like give each other what you want, then it doesn't, you know, like you're not getting what you want from the other person. And so it's so hard to be in relationship and marriage with people before
people are complicated.
I know. And especially before you really learn who you are, right? And like really dig into who you are and what you need. I think, you know, if we took more time, if we taught kids, if we taught teenagers more how to do that before we send them out and like, hey, hook up and find a spouse and, you know, all those things, man, I think marriages would last so much longer.
Yeah. And something that you said too is finding out what you need, because I was talking with a friend who's a counselor, and we were just discussing like codependency and talking about how we all have wounds. And I talked about childhood wounds earlier, but like we have all of these needs that they're basically just built into who we are. And we look to people to fill that. And a lot of times that's a God hole. That's what I like to call it. It's probably the worst thing together. But anyway, it makes sense to me. So y'all can make fun of me. I'm totally fine with it. But it's a God-sized hole. And we try to stick like our spouse there and our kids and our careers. And we're like, we're not fulfilled and we don't understand. That's why you look at these people who have fame and fortune and money, and it seems like everything, and they commit suicide. And you're like, what went wrong? What happened? And I think it's because we're looking for all these external things to fill us, and it just doesn't work. And then unfortunately, we both have these wounds, and then we get into a marriage and we have children and we expect them to fill that, and it just doesn't work. And it causes so much miscommunication and friction in relationships. So understanding that everybody kind of comes with their own stuff, and having grace and being patient and knowing that they're going to see things differently than you, and that's okay. It's not that you're right or wrong. Most of the time people just want to be heard and appreciated, not right or wrong. It's really not about that.
You know, it's so interesting that we're talking about this and how the Enneagram really fits into this. But, you know, something that I speak about all the time is authenticity and being your real true self. But it's really hard for us to do that if we don't even know who that is. And something that you pointed out earlier was the Enneagram is not the end all be all. You're not going to find, oh my God, this is who I am, all the things about yourself just by figuring out what your Enneagram is. That and understanding that that's okay, and that this can kind of be used as a guide. But at the end of the day, everything that was put inside of you, every piece, every experience, every dream, every longing, everything that was put inside of you was put there by God. And I truly believe that it's for you to be able to serve the world in the way that He made you to, the way that He created you to. So I definitely wanted to point that out, that it's not the end all be all. But then also I really quickly wanted to say that I am so grateful that you were so vulnerable about kind of, just the things you've been through, and the, all the ups and downs to kind of get to this place. Yeah. And is there any way that real quickly we can kind of go over what maybe some of the motivations or longings are for each of the types, just to kind of give people a little bit of a taste of what they might be getting into if they were to dive into the Enneagram a little bit more?
Yeah, totally. So do you want, so the motivations in general are broken down into 4 different things. So you have the core fear. This is what we're always running from. The core desire, what we're running to. The core weakness.
Let's do core desires.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So if you're a type 1, which typically is called a moral perfectionist, you're going to look it up and there's going to be different names for these, but in general, these are like the, adopted names for them. So the moral perfectionist, the desire is to have integrity and to be good and balanced, virtuous and right. So these are people who want to do everything by the rules. They just want to be right. They're going to eat really strict, they're going to do whatever they feel like is correct for their world. For a type 2, the supportive advisor, they want to be appreciated and loved and wanted. For a type 3, having high status and respect, being admired, successful, and valuable. And then for a type 4, unique, special, and authentic. You did say desire, right?
Yes.
Okay. I was reading and I was like, wait a minute, did she say something different? Okay.
Shoot. So, see, I told you that 4 is coming up again.
Yeah. So for a type 5, they're the investigative thinker, and they want to be capable and competent. So I know a lot of type 5s who are engineers, and so they want to be top of their game, very educated, very data driven, if that gives you a little bit more insight into that. For a type 6, a loyal guardian is to have security, guidance, and support. For a 7, being happy, fully satisfied, and content. And then for a type 8, protecting themselves and also their inner self, so who they are on the inside. And then for a type 9, it's to have inner stability and peace of mind. So those are all the things that are driving what we're doing.
Interesting. Okay. That's so wild. Okay, so when you were going through all of this Enneagram training, was there anything that, were there times when you would read something and be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who that is, and then call them on the phone and be like, oh my God, you have to read this. It's so you.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that, but I was like, oh, she is so this or she is so that. Yeah. And that's part of too, like understanding the Enneagram at first. It's super exciting. And you're like, oh, I can type all these people. You don't even need to take the test. I'm going to just tell you who you are. But the thing you have to remember is what we talked about earlier about those levels of health. Because if you would look at me, for like who I am, let's say whenever I'm doing an interview on a podcast, the successful achiever looks like, yeah, that could be me. And on the outside and on social media, they're like, oh, she accomplishes a lot of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But if you rewind back to 2014, when I was at the lowest point of my entire life, and I was 40 pounds overweight, and I was so depressed, I couldn't even stand it. I, thought about just forget it. They would be better without me, like that kind of thing. You wouldn't look at it like, oh yeah, she's a successful achiever. That's a type 3, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, you have those levels of health. Was I still who I am? Yeah, of course. I just forgot. I forgot who I was. I forgot my strength. I forgot that I didn't have to do everything on my own, that I had support. I just wasn't looking for it, and I wasn't reaching for it. And so that's why understanding the motivations and the fears and all of that is the key, because you could be operating in what you think, just like you said, what you think you should be for a long time. And that is exhausting to do that.
Exhausting.
And to wear that mask is just, you're not going to last very long doing it. Even if you've done it for years, not being true to who you are. I've seen this a lot, as well as like in the health industry, working with different people. All kinds of chronic diseases come out of that. Like you literally make yourself sick by not being authentic.
Oh, it's so true too, right? Because you just have like these little, and I this is not what the podcast was supposed to be about, but it's one of my greatest passions to talk about is, when you're not open about who you are and you show up as someone that you think you're supposed to be. And this is the case in literally any category of your life, right? In your marriage or in just anything at all, with friendships, parents, whatever. You had this little, I like to think of it as like just like a little ball of sitting inside of you. I don't have a better word for it than that. And it just like you said, when you were going through that really hard time, you would eat when you would start to feel emotions, because you're like, nope, I got to stuff this down, because because we're so taught all the time, like, nope, just put on a happy face. Nope, just stuff it down. Nope, just get over it. Just, and don't rock the boat, and like all the cliche sayings you could ever think of, to remain in this place where we are just people pleasing everyone and showing up as the happy, joyful little lady that they want us to show up as. And, we're going home and laying down in bed being like, oh my God, I don't even want to see people ever again because I'm so sick of it. Yeah, it's just, and I think, that's where a lot of anxiety comes from, and depression, and like you said, then chronic illness and pain, and, even bigger things that, I don't like to mention. But I think a lot of that really comes from, not exploring your emotions and who you really are, and just being okay with the person that God made you to be, right? Like he's never messed up before. He's never messed up before. So
you're not an exception.
Yeah, like you're special, boo, but you're not so special that you're the one thing that he screwed up in the whole world.
Oops.
Like, I mean, come on. Yeah.
So, and talking about that too reminds me of the question that you asked me about parenting. I have caught myself doing this so many times. I'm like, God, please help me to not be that parent, because I'm so quick to say, oh, you're just so lazy. Like, why are you just don't care, or you're just so hyper, or you're whatever. And like, what we don't realize is those words are sticking to our kids, and they're growing up because their personalities are being shaped. I feel like, they come out and they're like, they already have somewhat of a personality, but I do feel the way that you speak life into them, or opposite, it really has an effect on them. And so that's when I was talking about looking at the childhood wounding messages. And you could probably just Google that and find what the wounding messages of each Enneagram type is. But I really stay conscious of that whenever I'm talking to them, because I don't want those things to stick to them of, oh, you're so lazy. You don't ever care about your room. okay, I may feel that way, but I mean, my kid's sick, you know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
how about instead of me just, pretending that this child was given, these special magical organizational powers, how about I get my butt in there and help him? Like, let's
And teach
organize,
him how
or
to
let's
organize it. Yeah.
like, let's declutter some of this stuff so that he's not having to try to juggle, the 15 pairs of pants that his brother outgrew and other people gave us. And we're just like keeping all the things. Let's teach them how to do it. Same thing with food, like, oh, we don't keep our kids from eating sugar. Of course, I care about, overconsumption of sugar and things like that. I mean, I went to school for this, right? But I don't say like this food is bad or this food is good. It's just like, have you nourished yourself today? Okay. And like my kids understand that. And so I think too, giving them choice within, reason, like I said, my kids are 6 and 9. Okay. But within reason, like giving them more choice instead of telling them everything and like letting them figure things out on their own is important to empower them to be like, oh, when I grow up, I can figure things out on my own too and figure out who I am instead of like, well, she's so lazy and I'm this and I'm that, so I must be,
Or growing up and being like, yes, I'm finally an adult. I can eat ice cream for breakfast, and then just like overindulge for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's totally what I did. As soon as I was out of my parents' house and bought my own house, I was like, I get to eat ice cream anytime I want. I'm like, really? I just bought a house and I'm 24 years old, whatever. And that's what I'm excited about. Like, I mean,
isn't that so funny?
Yeah.
And you think when you're a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, when I'm an adult, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And why is like drinking or eating sugar like the first two things that we go to?
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. My husband and I, like, we're totally on the same page with that. That's what we're trying to avoid too, of like, there are no things that are forbidden here, as far as food stuff.
That's so amazing though. And not something that I've ever really thought about with my kids. God, my kids are freaking sugar addicts. Like for real. And I really have to be like, no, you've had this and this and this and this today. Eat like a real meal. Eat like a sandwich or something. And they're like, all right, fine. But if I do that, can I have a piece of candy? I'm like, what the heck? Yeah. But yeah, you're totally right. Like I like the idea of saying, have you nourished your body? Because then they're like, well, what does that mean? And then, that's a total new opportunity to teach them what that means. So, and a great way to think about it for myself too. And then that way it's not so restrictive.
I don't do good with restrictive. Imagine that. Don't fence me in, people.
Don't fence me. See, that's my 7 coming out. Nope. Authority, get off me. I can't handle it.
That's your 8. 8 doesn't want authority. 7 doesn't want to be pinned down, but 8 don't tell us what to do. So I have an 8 wing, and that one pops up a lot. Yeah.
So basically, I'm 2 people that can't be told what to do, stuffed inside one person.
Yeah. Well, I'm a 9, and I'm like, tell me what to do, and then my 8's like, I'm not doing it. So yeah, I'm really messed up.
Oh my gosh.
Not really.
Okay, so this has been so much fun. I love getting to talk to you, and I just think that we could do this all day and all night. But tell me a little bit. Let's do a rapid fire. That's what I meant. So let's see. Tell me a book, article, person, or talk that changed your life.
Book, article, person, or talk. Can I do something that's not on the list?
Of course.
So Ali Casaza, I followed her for a really long time. She's great at like empowering women. And I started to follow her because of her decluttering. But she put out this meditation that it's a motherhood mindset meditation. And I do it, I'd say at least 3 times a week. And it's only like 10 minutes. But putting that on in the morning just completely revolutionizes my day. It just puts me in the mindset of like, I'm an empowered woman, I'm a loved woman, and I'm already equipped to do whatever the day is going to ask of me. Like before it even comes, I can handle it. So that has been a huge thing that I've done for about 2 years.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Tell me your favorite Friday night at home.
There you go. You said it. It's at home. At home with food that I did not have to cook, that tastes good with my family. Honestly, kids are already in bed and hubby and I watch a movie. That's just my favorite time. Yeah.
Isn't it so funny? I've done this podcast for 60 something episodes, and I swear that is like, I think only one person in this whole time has been like, I like to go out for margaritas and Mexican food, but everyone else is like, I just want to be at home on my couch. That's it. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, Mexican food sounds awesome, but like, I want to get it to go and come back. I mainly just want to wear my pajamas. Like, that's really what it boils down to. I have really great pajamas.
I love it. That's amazing. Okay. What was your dream job as a kid? And I know this one is going to be hard for you because it's going to be like 27 things.
Lord.
So
Actually, I wanted to be a mom. That was the first one.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So I did that one. Woo! Check mark 3 times.
Check mark.
And then I wanted to be a teacher. And then I wanted to be a nurse, which is actually what I started school for. That started this whole thing. I thought I wanted to be a nurse and then realized that the sight of blood actually makes me nauseated. So that wasn't really going to work. So I dropped out that day and decided to go into speech pathology from there. But yeah, wanted to be a mom. That was my first thing. That
is so crazy because it's so crazy because we're so similar and also clearly so different because I don't even like kids and I have 4 of them.
Yeah. I mean, you like have a bonus point. I'm only got 3. So you're beating me.
I love them. It's just, I like it when they go to school. Yeah. They're a good time.
I get it.
So what is your next vacation that you're planning?
Honestly, I really, really, really want, if COVID.
If we ever get to vacation.
Yeah. If they let us out, then I want to go back to Tennessee. That's where my husband and I were married. And I would just want to take our boys and our daughter too. But I mean, she's really young still, but our boys would just love to see the mountains, would love to see snow, wide open spaces where they can just run and be crazy. And that would be staying in a cabin, just sitting around drinking coffee, maybe seeing a couple shows. Like that would be ideal.
Yeah. That can't wait. Amazing.
Yeah. And my brother lives in Tennessee now. So it's going to be cool to be able to visit him too.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. I feel like just having those times with your family, some of my, I just said I don't like kids, but our best times as a family. So it's fine. Do what?
I said, but if you like yours most of the time, it's fine.
Most of the time, yes, I like them. But
D- is passing. So if you love them at least D-, I mean, you still get to go to the next grade. So
I agree with you though. I think I'm a C+. I think I'm a C+. So we're doing all right. Yeah, but some of my best memories are like vacations with them and stuff. I think it's just the day-to-day that really grinds my gears and, that sort of thing. But anywho, that's not about me. It's about you. Tell our listeners, what is your best advice to live with Audacity?
I think my best advice would be to figure out who you are and not try to fit into the mold of everybody else, because it's exhausting, and to give yourself grace while you are figuring out who that person is, and let it be messy. And that's totally fine.
Yes. Let it be messy, because I have found that, I think like, aha, eureka, I've got it. And then it's like, oh, actually, I'm not totally sure that I got it.
I've got it for like 2 days, and then I'm like, back to square one.
And then I think, just embracing that it is a journey and understanding that you're on a path, and like, it's okay to just be in the present and know that it's all part of the creative process. I had a friend remind me of that recently, and I loved it. So glad you brought that up. Where can people find you to get more information about what you do and all the things? Yeah,
so I'm on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. You can find me Full on Purpose. So FULL on Purpose. And then I have a podcast called Mama Meets Enneagram. And that is on lots of different podcast platforms. So you can also just find it on my website to make it easy. It's fullonpurpose.com/podcast.
Perfection. And I, of course, will have all of those links in the show notes for you, everyone. Becky, thank you so much for being here. I had such a great time getting to know you even more and laughing and being silly and learning about the Enneagram.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me be myself and be quirky and silly and come on and have a conversation with you for all to hear.
It's so fun to be yourself and be quirky, right?
It's easy. It's easy if you just let it be.
Yes, agreed.
Hey, boo-boo. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you found value in this episode, do me a solid favor and take a screenshot, post it in your stories, and tag me. I love watching you grow and live up to your greatest potential. Let me cheer you on.